Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of Golf Business Live, powered by Supreme Golf. I'm your host, Michael Williams. It's a pleasure to be with you as always, talking about that which we do, which is also that which we love. I am, of course, talking about golf. We're getting towards the end of the year here. The end of the season here in DC came around a long time ago. The end of the year is upon us, and it's been an amazing year for golf. It's been quite something. And we've had a couple in a row. The plague just brought an interesting time to the game. It's brought a lot of people to the game. It's brought a lot of attention to the game. And we give thanks for things that we have during this year of 2023. Again, that's new players, those new rounds, those numbers, those things are all doing great. And so to really talk about that in a very professional way, we're not going to have to listen to me. I want you to listen to this guy. He is the founder and president of Pellucid, a privately held information and insight services provider to the golf industry, and one heck of a nice guy. Please welcome Jim Koppenhaver. Jim, welcome to Golf Business Live. How are you, my friend?
I'm good. Yourself? Good to be back with you. It's been a couple of months.
It's been too long. It's just been too long. We got to make this a regular thing, okay?
Well, as you mentioned, the good thing is the time that we've been away from each other, things have gone very well. So it's going to be fun today to chat about how well they actually went.
Yeah, absolutely. And, let's sort of dive right into that thing, right? Because you're one of those people that, there's a generation of people who sort of did this business by, I feel like something is happening. I feel like things are okay. And then there's this group of people who actually quantify that by doing the counting. You're one of those people, one of the best at it. So by the numbers, I feel like 2023 was a good year. How good of a year was 2023?
It was an amazing year. And so as you and I have talked previously, one of the figures that people watch quite closely is the rounds played. And last year we came within a hair of what I call a modern era record. The old record was set back in 2001, which is about the time we started actually counting rounds. And that was 518 million. And right now we just got the prelims in from participants in our Golf Market Research Center. And my call right now is going to be between 520 and 525.
Wow.
So we will sail over that bar by a couple of million. And it'll be kind of sweet to just reflect and bask in the glory here for a little bit between now and GBC in Orlando coming up here in 2 weeks.
Yeah. And, I'm old enough to remember when we had industry initiatives like Play It Forward or Tee It Forward and this and that, and the Grow the Game and all sorts of things. We both went to Golf 2020. There are all kinds of things that have been done. So if anybody's going to is there any one thing that caused it that was intentional that causes that we can take a victory lap for, or we just get lucky by people being forced outside to something that they could do without catching the plague?
Yeah, unfortunately, it's more the latter than the former. You were talking about all those industry initiatives. The one that I loved was Flogton, which is not golf spelled backwards. I think that died a fairly quick, sudden death. The idea was to just take everything about golf and blow it up and basically say golf is whatever you want it to be, whenever you want it to be, however you want it to be. But no, one of the things I just finished last week for our January Pellucid Perspective. It's kind of like it was a year that many, many things went right. But now as an analyst, what I have to ask is why? To your point, was there a singular player development program? Not really. Did we change the time factor? People have always said it takes too long. No, golf still takes 4 to 5 hours. They say it costs too much money. No, actually, with inflation, it costs more money now than it did several years ago. So as I look at it, I mean, really the only two things I can think of, we did get about a 3% lift from weather. So as you know, we started tracking weather back in 2005. So one of the things that we're always interested in is when things go well, was that simply Mother Nature helping us, or is it something we did better? The good news is utilization, which is the rounds against the capacity rounds, actually went up a point. So we had 3% better weather, but we had 4% higher rounds. So what that says is we did do some things well that raised the utilization. But really the only other factor, and Harry and I were talking about a little bit before, is golf has picked up a little bit of cool. So the younger generation during COVID, they started playing it. They were like, hey, this is okay. If you'll let me bring my music and I can stay connected on my social media while I'm playing, which courses are more doing now. I think that's the other factor that's really helped us is we've gotten a little bit of cool and we've been a little bit more accepting of the fact that it's not the traditional game that we grew up with, silence on the course, put your phone away, wear jeans, etc.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it seems that there's more of a variety of experiences that the market is responding to the demand for a more come as you are type of customer. And if they ever want to see them again, you will take them as they come, make them feel comfortable. And then not only do you have that customer, you may have that person's children, grandchildren, and so forth, because that's the way that business works too. I mean, when you look at it going forward, so we had a lot of luck. A lot of things that happen, like weather and other conditions out of most people's control. Is there anything that you're advising people to do that they can do intentionally, other than the things that you talked about in terms of how you offer yourself and present yourself in terms of the experience? What other things are operators looking at doing to, if not increase this wave, then keep it, maintain these levels for years and years to come?
Yeah, I'm gonna do the presidential debate on you here. I'm gonna get to that question in a second, Michael. But first, let me talk about the other thing. Is I've said to people for a long time, revenue is the key driver of this industry. You can't take rounds to the bank. So I wanted to touch real briefly. We had an even better year on revenue in 23 than we did on rounds. So if you look at our rounds, we're going to be up about 4%. Our revenue, our golf revenue, is going to be up about 9%. And then you look at that and say, gee, we factored in pricing. We took our prices up about 4%. So two things went well for us there. Number one, we took a price increase, which we needed during the inflationary times. And the other thing is we got some mixed favorability, which is people gravitating to higher price times. So the other great news to go along with the rounds was actually what we take to the bank in money. We had an even better money year. Now, to your point about, what could we do differently? One of the things, a horse that I've been on for years, and I just don't seem to be making any progress, we are absolutely terrible at customer relationship management, or CRM. And that comes down to, do you know who your customers are? Do you know what their playing habits are? And do you talk to them relevant to their playing behavior? So, for example, if you know that Jim comes and plays every weekend, I would expect an email from that course that recognizes I'm there every weekend. If I came as a new customer, I would like to get an email that says, hey, Jim, we noticed you played our course. We'd love for you to come back. And even more importantly, if I didn't come back, there should be something that identifies that in the POS, the point of sale system, that says, hey, Jim played 22 times last year and it's May in Chicago and he hasn't been back once. We as golf courses should be sending Jim an email and say, we miss you this year. What is it we need to do to get you back on the course? So that's the big opportunity that I see, is we're still not upping our game in customer relationship management.
I see the same thing. And I say that as a guy who used to be in marketing, at a golf course management company, that marketing and many organizations, and this is across the spectrum, whether it be very large organizations or one or two course owners, tend to be, in some places, more or less an afterthought. People feel like they will spend whatever's left over or spend that minimum amount on marketing and things like that. How do you evangelize for spending the marketing dollars and making that a driver of revenue?
Yeah, I think it's twofold. One is you have to first take that leap of faith. And you have to say, look, I'm going to have to spend 3 to 5% of my revenue next year on marketing. And that's a hard leap, because to your point, what they want is they want something that guarantees they're going to get that money back in 30 days. And you and I both know that ain't going to happen.
Right. It's not a T-bill, right? It's marketing, right?
Exactly. So that's the first thing. And the second thing, and this is where the industry has not helped the operators much, it's getting better, is you have to have tools to make it easy for these folks. I mean, as an operator, you have 100 things on your plate, and anything that's hard for me to do, I'm not going to do it. So an example would be, we've been working with a firm called Metolius, and what Metolius is doing is they're taking the data to the cloud. So they're basically backing up the local server point of sale and taking it out to the cloud. And so the question is, well, why would you do that? Well, the first thing is we can do better analysis on it if it's in the cloud in a common place. The second thing is we can link it up to, if I can identify for the golf course with Metolius as the middleware that I had 150 defectors, what you now need to do for me as the operator is make it so I can pass that list right out to my broadcast email program. I'm going to put the defector message up underneath there, and I'm going to hit the send button. That's what we need to do for the operator. Today, they have to export the list. They have to link it up to the broadcast email. They have to go in and write the copy every single time. And I completely get why they're not doing it, because that's an hour exercise every single time you do it.
So you know where I'm going to go next. Now, we're just to sort of put a bow a little bit on this marketing discussion. I'll get to some things that you do kind of uniquely when talking about the weather. So we talk about the resources that go into that sort of thing. And now you have this thing that is on the horizon called AI. And are you getting questions or giving answers about how AI can be the tool to make what you just said happen more easily and affordably? I mean, let's even say realistically for an organization, regardless of size.
Yeah. So a couple answers to that question. We're about halfway up the hype curve at this point. So as you know, everything, I saw 3 emails last week, here's how AI is going to change the industry of golf. And I'm like thinking about it, it's like, okay, I can think of 3 or 4 applications, but of the places that would be bleeding edge on AI, I don't think golf is going to be bleeding edge on AI. So that's why I say I'm halfway up the hype curve.
Gotcha.
We have looked at some things. We've changed just in our emails. We've changed headlines. We've changed copy. And anybody who knows me will know that I am a verbose person when I write. And so I'll send, 500 words off to AI and basically say, here's my message, and it'll send it back to me in 66. So I have, and we are doing some of that stuff. As it relates to golf courses, that's really not our bailiwick. So we haven't been connecting golf courses with service providers that we think are good at that, just because we're analysts by trade. So as you look at it, kind of in the marketing execution, I have obviously ideas and thoughts as a former brand manager at Kraft Foods, but we really don't delve much into here's how you enable that for your 24 season.
I'm going to shift the conversation a little bit to weather, because I know I think it's fascinating for you to take that and use that analysis as an outdoor activity. This is so critical to have somebody who's taking this factor into consideration. You said that the weather, and I'm assuming you're talking about across the U.S. on average, we had a weather pattern that gave us a little bit more capacity. Are you able to accurately forecast what's going to go on in 2024 and use that to apply? Can you do the AccuWeather golf forecast and bring that into the business plan?
Yep. Yeah. So basically, we introduced a new tool last year. The new tool is called Foresight. So as you mentioned, we got into the golf weather impact business in 2005. We teamed up with a company called WeatherBank, 2 brothers down in Oklahoma, the Root brothers, great guys. And so we started building for golf. What are rules for golf playable hours and how you apply that to history? And so we came up with, it wasn't a perfect system, but it was a better system than anybody had. Fast forward 12 years, the Root brothers get bought out by AccuWeather. So now we're hooked to an even bigger ship. That's kind of like, we love that. And what the owners were telling us back then, many of them who weren't buying our historical weather, is they said, Jim, I'm not interested in history. I want to know what's going to happen next week. Right. I was like, well, if I knew that, I wouldn't be doing this for a living. I'd be on Wall Street trading futures there, guys.
Or at the track.
Yeah, or at the track. It's like Back to the Future. I've got the Trader's Almanac from 5 years ahead. But basically, when we got connected with AccuWeather, and that's obviously their stock and trade, they're like, hey, we are the most accurate forecasters there are. We did actually 2 years ago now introduce 60-day by day forecasting of capacity rounds. So companies who buy that service from us, we will give them, here's the forecast for the next 60 days of how many capacity rounds we think you'll do. To build on what you were asking, though, so now the question is like, well, great, Jim. So you've now got the 60-day forecast for 14,000 golf courses. I want to know what's going to happen in 24 nationally. So I went back to the Root Brothers and I said, here's my challenge. I said, I need you to build me a year out forecast. And we built it from about 2,200 weather stations. So they built that for me a year and a half ago. I just ran those numbers last weekend. And I sent a note to Steve Root and I said, I get up like 9% in golf playable hours for 24 using my forecasting tool. I said, tell me that that's a mistake, because the weather just doesn't move up 9%. We're still working through it with him, but he's basically saying the El Nino pattern, which will come into effect next year, he said, we're seeing that every place we forecast. And he said, I'm not going to hang my hat on +9, but he said it will be significantly better than 23. I can pretty much guarantee that. So I look at it and I say, gee, we were up 3 this year. And I look at it, that was 4% below the 10-year norm. So we do have upside relative to normal. And I got the weather guys saying that our first pass at the number is saying it could be up another 3 or 4%. They're saying that's not out of the question. So one of the things that we're looking forward to is we do think we're going to get an assist from Mother Nature again in 24.
Interesting. I'll nerd out on this a little bit and just say, so we talk about more playable rounds. I think that was the term that you used, right? Playable rounds. Yep. How is that defined in terms of a weather day? Is it specifically about precipitation? Because I know some of my good friends in Texas had about 100 straight days of 100-degree weather. And I don't know what anybody else thinks, but there's only so much of that a good person can take. So, yeah. So how do you define a good weather playable round? What does that look like?
You don't want to go down this rabbit hole with me, but let me give you the Reader's Digest condensed version. So when we started this, the first thing we said is you can't define playable days, because now you've got the challenge of it rained in the morning but was perfectly good in the afternoon. What do you do with that? So we started with an hour as our building block, and we went back to our weather partners and said, we need to be able to measure every hour. So the way our waterfall works, for your benefit, is we start with, are we in season? And so like in Chicago, the first thing you have to ask is, are you in season? And we use temperature patterns to do that. So generally our season will open around the 15th of March here. It'll close around the 15th of November. That's the first cut for a golf playable hour. Then the next cut is it daylight? Obviously, we don't play golf in evenings, so there we have to take sunrise and sunset. We back that off because you don't tee it up as soon as the sun peaks over, and you don't start an 18-hole round 5 minutes before sun goes down. Then the next thing we do is within those, we now look at the temperature and the weather factors, as you mentioned. So we'll look at temperature, we'll look at precipitation, we'll look at wind speed. And as you mentioned, DC actually was the area that made this aware to us. We were just using temperature at the beginning. And so we were getting these 90-degree days with 80% humidity. And we were saying, hey, it's golf playable. And our operators in DC were like, are you out of your mind, Jim? Have you ever played in 90, 80? So then we went to heat index. We went to wind chill here in Chicago. And so basically every hour that passes all 4 of those tests now becomes a golf playable hour. And then we just start adding those up from 2,000 weather stations and 14,000 courses. And the cherry on top is, to your point, we weight that by rounds contribution, which is we know that Florida's weather matters a heck of a lot more than Fargo, North Dakota's weather does to us as an industry.
Yeah, we could turn this into meteorology and you podcast, but so many things that I want to ask on that one. We'll save it for Florida, because I am going to see you in Orlando, and that's where I'll put a bow on this conversation, is to know that you're going to be speaking about the state of the industry. Give us a little preview about what you'll be talking about at the PGA show this year.
Yep. So on Thursday, the 25th, from 1:30 to 3, we'll be in the Media Center, which is 312A, and we'll geek out for 90 full minutes on weather and other things. We'll talk about the overall scorecard. So we have 7 KPIs, or key performance indicators. And all of them will be green this year. We generally do kind of green, black, red. Green is good, red is bad, and black is somewhere in the middle. Mm-hmm. So we'll touch on that. We'll talk a little bit about technology. I've talked a little bit in this about the POS systems. We're moving data to the cloud. That's all good stuff. My colleague Stuart Lindsay is going to talk about, hey, when you're at 70% utilization, revenue gains now comes from more actively managing your tee sheet. So how do you find those 1 and 2 person openings in there? How do you reduce your cancellations? We're just going to have to get more creative in 2024 if we're going to drive that revenue higher. The low-hanging fruit is now kind of off the tree. So that's just a sneak preview of what we'll be talking about.
Sounds juicy, Jim. Expect to see me in the audience. I will not heckle. I will only support. It should be great fun. And again, it's been an amazing year, and can only appreciate you being a person who turns a good feeling into a good fact and makes it available to us in the next year, man. All the best to you. Can't wait to see you in Orlando. Until then, stay safe, brother.
We will see you there in warmer temperatures.
You got it. That's for sure. Jim Koppenhaver of Pellucid. I think, again, it's so important to be able to take data and turn it into an action, take those numbers out of the cloud and look at it, and just like sort of the matrix, be able to form that into a picture, a story, an action that you can perform to actually make your course do the things that you want it to do, which is presumably to be a profitable and enjoyable enterprise, both for the people who come there and the people who work there and everybody else in the community. Look, that's just about our show for today. Again, our segment today and our show today is just our one guest with Jim, but so worth it to have him. But I just want to say thanks to everybody who makes this show possible. That's Harry Morell, that's Taylor Wall. All the folks down at NGCOA are just amazing. All you members are amazing. Thank you all for the great support that you give the show throughout the year. Can't wait to see you all. The event's coming up in the coming year and for years to come. So for everybody here at NGCOA, I'm Michael Williams. This is Golf Business Live. Love you. Can't wait to see you again.